Hello, make yourself comfortable. Tonight, there is nowhere to be and nothing to do except listen. Let your eyes close if they have not already. Tonight, you are at a small beach house somewhere warm. It is summer. The evening is just beginning to settle in and you have absolutely nowhere else to be. You step out through the screen door onto the porch and it swings shut gently behind you with a soft, familiar creak. The kind of sound that belongs entirely to wooden beach houses in summer. The kind you've heard 1,000 times before and will hear 1,000 times again. The air outside is warm, but not hot anymore. The worst of the afternoon heat has already started to soften into something gentler, something more golden, as the sun lowers itself slowly toward the water ahead of you. The porch faces the sea directly, just a strip of sandy ground between the house and the beach itself, scattered with a few hardy tufts of grass, and then the sand, pale gold, stretching down to where the waves roll in, slow and steady, one after another, the same unhurried rhythm they've probably held all day, all week, all summer. A pair of worn flip-flops sits by the porch steps, kicked off carelessly at some point earlier in the day and never quite put away. A faded beach towel hangs over the porch railing, still slightly damp at one corner, gently lifting and settling with each small gust of warm air. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime made of small shells clinks very softly, an irregular, gentle sound, nothing like a rhythm, just the occasional quiet clatter whenever the air moves enough to stir it. To your right, strung between two wooden posts, is a hammock, faded canvas, striped in colours that were probably brighter once, a soft blue, a worn red, a yellow that's mostly given way to a kind of pale cream now, after years of sun. It sways very slightly, even though there's barely any wind, just the faintest movement of warm, evening air drifting in off the water. You walk over to it and you ease yourself down into it slowly, the way you always have to with a hammock, finding your balance before you commit your full weight to it. It dips and sways gently underneath you, then settles, and you let your body sink into the curve of the fabric, and you feel your shoulders, which have been carrying some invisible weight all day, finally let go. Let your breathing slow down, just a little. There is nothing to figure out tonight, nowhere to rush to. You are simply settling slowly into a warm, quiet evening. From the hammock, you have a clear view straight out over the water. The sun is still well above the horizon, but it's lower than it was even 10 minutes ago, the light turning from white gold to something deeper, something closer to honey, spreading low and warm across the surface of the sea. The waves continue their steady rhythm, roll in, soft white foam, spreading thin across the sand, then pull back out again, leaving the sand dark and glistening for a moment before it dries pale again under the warm evening air. Over and over. The same motion, the same sound, a low, steady shh that rises and falls with each wave, close enough that you can hear it clearly, far enough that it never feels loud. A light breeze moves across the porch, just enough to make the hammock sway very slightly beneath you, and just enough to carry the smell of salt and warm sand, and something green, some kind of plant growing nearby. You're not sure what. maybe rosemary, maybe something else entirely, but it smells like summer evenings, whatever it is. You let your eyes drift along the horizon, where the sea meets the sky in a long, soft line, slightly hazy in the warm evening air. Closer to shore, a small group of sandpipers scurries along the wet sand, darting forward each time a wave retreats, pecking quickly at something in the sand, then skittering back just ahead of the next wave rolling in. You watch them for a while, their thin legs moving almost too fast to follow, a constant, busy little dance along the edge of the water, entirely unconcerned with anything beyond the next retreating wave. Far out, almost at that hazy line where the water and sky blur together, you notice a small shape moving slowly across the water. A ship, you realize after a moment, sailing along the horizon far enough away that you can't make out any detail, just a small dark silhouette gliding steadily from one side of your view to the other. In no apparent hurry, the way distant ships always seem to move, slow and certain, going somewhere you'll never know, for reasons you'll never know either. You watch it for a while, this small, distant ship, until it disappears behind a point of land far down the coast, and the horizon is empty again. Just water and sky and that long, soft line where they meet. Notice how your body feels, settled into the hammock. There is nothing you need to watch for, nothing you need to track, just the waves and the warm air and whatever happens to drift across the water in front of you. After a while, you notice something else out on the water, closer this time than the ship had been. A small disturbance in the surface, a brief dark curve breaking through, then disappearing again. You watch the spot, waiting, and a few seconds later, it happens again, slightly further along, a fin, smooth and grey, rising just above the water and slipping back under in one fluid motion. Dolphins. A small group of them moving steadily along the coastline, not far from shore, surfacing and diving in that same unhurried rhythm as everything else this evening. You count what you think are 3 of them, though it's hard to be certain, since they only show themselves for a moment at a time before vanishing back beneath the surface. You watch them make their way along the water, gradually moving further down the coast, until eventually you stop being able to tell whether you're still seeing them or just imagining the shapes in the low evening light. Either way, it doesn't matter. They were there. You saw them. And now the water is calm again, the same gentle waves rolling in toward shore, nothing breaking the surface except foam. Further down the beach, you notice someone walking along the shoreline far enough away that they're little more than a small silhouette against the gold light on the water. They walk slowly, unhurried, pausing now and then to look down at something in the sand, then continuing on. You watch them for a while, this small, distant stranger, until they pass behind a low dune and out of sight, and the beach in front of you is empty again, just sand and water, and the steady rhythm of the waves. You let yourself relax further into the hammock, your body finding small adjustments here and there, the way it does when settling somewhere for a long while. Your feet, your shoulders, the angle of your head against the canvas, all gradually finding their most comfortable position. After a while, you remember the drink you brought out with you, sitting on the small wooden table beside the hammock, sweating gently in the warm air. a few drops of condensation sliding slowly down the side of the glass. You reach for it without sitting up fully, your fingers finding the cool glass easily, and you take a slow sip. Something simple, iced tea perhaps, or lemonade, sweet and a little tart, cold enough to feel good against the warm evening air, the ice cubes shifting and clinking softly as you tip the glass. You set it back down, the glass leaving a small wet ring on the wood, and you let your arms settle back into the hammock beside you, the warmth of the evening already beginning to dry the last bit of coolness from your fingers. Let your body feel loose and warm. There is nothing to do now except watch the water and feel the breeze and notice whatever drifts past. The sun has dropped further now, low enough that its light has turned fully golden, then deepening toward orange, casting long, warm streaks across the surface of the sea. The waves catch this light each time they curl and break, a brief shimmer of orange and gold along the white foam before it fades back into the deeper blue of the water beyond. A pelican glides past, low over the waves, barely a few feet above the water, its wings barely moving, simply riding some invisible current of air just above the surface. It travels the length of your view in a few seconds, then banks slightly and disappears behind a stand of palm trees further down the beach. A little further out, you notice a few smaller birds skimming the surface in short, quick bursts, diving suddenly and disappearing beneath the water for a moment before bursting back up into flight, empty-beaked some of the time, carrying some small silver flash of a fish other times, before angling away toward a rocky outcrop you hadn't noticed before, just visible at the edge of your view where the beach curves out of sight. Somewhere behind you, in the small garden beside the house, you hear the first soft chirp of crickets beginning their evening chorus, tentative at first, just one or two, then gradually joined by more, building slowly into that steady, layered hum that will likely continue, unbroken, for the rest of the night. You close your eyes for a moment just to listen. The waves, the crickets, the faint, far-off call of some seabird you can't identify, drifting across the water from somewhere down the coast. Let your eyelids feel heavy, the way they do in warm evening air like this. There is nothing left to watch for right now except whatever happens to pass by, slowly, in its own time. The sun continues its slow descent, and the color of the sky has begun shifting in earnest now, the gold giving way to deeper orange, the orange bleeding upward into a soft pink, and higher still, where the sky hasn't yet caught the last of the light, a deepening blue, the first hint of the night that's still an hour or so away. You watch the horizon, half expecting another ship, another fin, another shape to drift across your view, and after a while, you're not disappointed. Far out, near where you'd seen the first ship earlier, another vessel comes into view, this one smaller, lower in the water. A fishing boat, perhaps, judging by its shape, making its way slowly along the coast, the small white shape of it catching the last warm light and turning briefly golden, before continuing on, unhurried, toward wherever it's headed for the evening. You wonder, briefly, who's on it, what they're thinking about, out there on the water, watching the same sunset from a different angle than you. You don't dwell on the thought. It simply passes, the way the boat itself is passing, slow and steady, toward the edge of your view and then beyond it. Closer to shore, a small flock of gulls has settled onto a sandbar that's just beginning to show as the tide shifts, standing in a loose, scattered group, facing the same direction, into whatever faint breeze is moving across the water. Every so often, one of them lifts off, circles once and resettles a few feet from where it started, for no reason you can determine, before going still again, along with the rest of the group. The hammock sways very gently as you shift your weight, settling deeper into it, your body now fully given over to the slow, rhythmic motion of it, swinging almost imperceptibly with each small movement of the warm evening breeze. Below the porch, the tide seems to be coming in slightly. You notice the line of wet, dark sand creeping a little higher up the beach than it was when you first sat down, the waves reaching slightly further with each new arrival, leaving their mark a little closer to the dry, pale sand each time, before retreating again. A few gulls wheel overhead, calling to each other in that sharp, familiar cry that belongs so completely to beaches at this hour, circling once, twice, before settling somewhere further down the shore, their silhouettes small and dark against the softening pink sky. You notice the wooden boards of the porch beneath the hammock, sun-bleached and a little rough, still holding some of the day's warmth, even as the air around you begins, very slowly, to cool. You notice the way the screen door, slightly ajar behind you, lets a thin slice of warm light spill out from inside the house, where a single lamp must already be on, waiting for you to come back in eventually, though there's no rush for that yet. Further down the beach, a small fire has been lit, just a low orange glow at this distance, with a few thin, dark silhouettes gathered loosely around it, too far away to make out faces or hear voices, just a soft, warm point of light against the darkening sand, and every now and then, carried faintly on the breeze, the very edge of laughter, or perhaps music, too distant to be anything more than a vague, pleasant murmur beneath the steady sound of the waves. Let your thoughts move slowly now, the way they do in warm evening air. There is nothing to finish, no need to notice everything at once, just one small thing at a time, and then the next. The sun touches the horizon now, a deep, glowing orange disk, the bottom edge of it seeming to flatten slightly as it meets the line of the sea, and you watch it sink slowly by what feels like fractions of an inch, the light around it deepening into a richer red, streaked through with soft violet higher in the sky. The waves continue their steady rhythm, indifferent to the sunset happening above them, simply rolling in, foaming white, pulling back, over and over, the same motion they've held since long before you arrived, and will hold long after you've gone inside. Somewhere out past the breaking waves, you catch one more glimpse of a fin, just one, this time, alone, rising and dipping once before vanishing beneath the surface. A single dolphin perhaps left behind from the earlier group, or a different one entirely, making its own slow way along the darkening water. You watch the spot where it disappeared for a while, but it doesn't surface again, at least not where you can see it, and eventually your eyes drift back to the sunset, which has nearly finished its descent now, just a thin sliver of orange light left above the horizon, the sky above it deepening rapidly now into purples and blues, the first stars beginning to show themselves faintly in the places where the sky has gone darkest. Let your whole body get heavy in the hammock now. There is nothing left to watch for tonight except the last of the light fading slowly into the dark. The last of the orange light slips below the horizon, and for a moment the sky holds on to a soft afterglow, a band of deep red-violet low against the water, fading gradually upward into a darker and darker blue, until eventually even that afterglow begins to dim. The sea, which had been catching all that warm colour just minutes ago, has gone dark now too, a deep navy black, the waves visible mostly by the pale white foam where they break, glowing faintly against the darkness each time they curl over and collapse onto the sand. Above you, the stars have started to appear in earnest. First, just a few, scattered and faint, and then, as your eyes adjust to the dark, more and more of them, until the whole sky above the water is scattered with small, steady points of light, more than you'd expect to see from anywhere, except somewhere exactly like this, far enough from any city for the sky to stay properly dark. You tilt your head back slightly in the hammock, looking straight up, finding a few familiar shapes among the scattered stars, though you don't try too hard to name them. It's enough just to look, just to notice how many there are, just to feel, briefly, how small the hammock is, how small the porch is, how small you are beneath all that quiet, scattered light. A single bright point of light moves slowly and steadily across one corner of the sky, too smooth and too constant to be a star, too high and too quiet to be a plane. A satellite, perhaps, tracing its own patient line across the dark, indifferent to everything happening far below it on this small porch, this small stretch of sand, this small evening that feels, from down here, like the whole entire world. Notice how still everything has become. The waves continue, the same steady rhythm as always, but everything else has settled into a deep, warm quiet. The crickets, steady now, layered and constant, and somewhere further off, very faint. The soft, rhythmic chirp of some other night creature you can't quite place. There is nothing left to watch for in the sky, just the stars, scattered and patient, exactly where they'll stay all night. A boat passes again, far out, though you can barely see it now in the dark, just a single small light, moving slowly along the horizon, blinking faintly every few seconds, a warning light, perhaps, or simply a lamp on deck, marking its slow progress through the dark water. You watch it for a while, the same way you watched the ship earlier, the same way you watched the dolphins, the same slow, unhurried noticing that has filled this entire evening. One small thing after another, none of them urgent, none of them needing anything from you except your quiet attention, briefly, before they pass on and disappear. The light moves steadily along the horizon, and then gradually it's gone, swallowed up by distance and dark, and the horizon is empty again, just stars reflected faintly here and there on the black water, trembling slightly with each small ripple. You shift slightly in the hammock, finding a slightly different angle, your body settling further into the warm evening, the canvas creaking very softly beneath you with the small movement. The air has cooled, just slightly, from the heat of the afternoon, though it's still warm enough to be comfortable without anything covering you, just the warm night air itself, settling gently over your skin, carrying that same smell of salt and sand, now joined by something else, something sweeter. Some night-blooming flower somewhere nearby, opening only now that the sun has gone down. You breathe it in slowly, and you let your eyes drift closed for a while, just listening. The waves, the crickets, the occasional soft creak of the hammock as it sways almost imperceptibly in the warm night breeze. Let your breathing slow down even further now. There is nowhere left to look, nothing left to watch for, just the sound of the waves, steady and patient, exactly as they've been all evening. Somewhere in that quiet listening, your mind drifts loose from the porch around you, the way it does sometimes late in the evening, when the body has gone still, but the mind hasn't quite stopped moving yet. You find yourself remembering another summer evening from some other year, though you couldn't say exactly when. A different stretch of sand somewhere, the details fuzzy now, softened by time. The smell of salt water drying on warm skin. The particular tiredness that comes after a full day in the sun. The good kind of tired, heavy in the legs, heavy in the eyes. You remember bare feet on warm wooden boards, not unlike the ones beneath this hammock now. You remember the sound of someone else's laughter somewhere nearby, though you couldn't say whose, not anymore, just the shape of the memory, the warmth of it, without needing the specific details to make it real. You remember the sky on that evening too, or some evening like it, full of stars in much the same way it's full of stars tonight. And you remember thinking then, the same way you might think now, how strange it is that the sky looks almost exactly the same from any beach, anywhere, any summer, as though the stars themselves don't know or care which particular evening you're watching them from. The memory doesn't need to resolve into anything more specific than that. It doesn't need names or exact dates or a clear beginning and end. It simply exists, soft and warm at the edges, the way memories of ordinary summer evenings tend to settle in the mind, not as a story, but as a feeling. A particular quality of warmth, a particular quality of ease, the sense of having nowhere to be and nothing to do, except exist quietly under a wide, dark, star-filled sky. Let this memory drift gently through your mind. There is nothing you need to remember correctly, nothing you need to hold on to. It can simply pass through, soft and warm, the way it's passing through now. You think vaguely of other evenings like this one, not specific evenings, just a general sense of them layered one on top of another over the years. Warm sand, salt air, the sound of waves endlessly repeating, patient and steady, the same rhythm they've probably held for longer than any memory you could possibly have of them. You think of the dolphins you saw earlier, somewhere out there now in the dark water, moving along the coast the same way they always do, finding their own rest eventually, somewhere out past where you can see. You think of the small boat with its single blinking light, further down the coast by now, perhaps reaching wherever it was headed, perhaps still moving steadily through the dark, towards some harbour you'll never see. You think of the stars overhead, the same stars more or less that have looked down on every summer evening you've ever spent like this one, on every porch, every hammock, every stretch of warm sand, going back further than memory can really reach. None of these thoughts arrive with any urgency. They simply rise briefly and then settle back down again, the way the tide itself rises and settles over and over all night, whether you're awake to notice it or not. Your breathing has slowed even further now. There is nothing left to remember and nothing left to imagine, just the waves, the warm dark, and the slow, easy weight of your own body, settling further into the hammock with every breath. Your body feels heavier now, sunk fully into the curve of the hammock, the canvas holding you the way it has all evening, swaying very gently, almost too gently to notice, in the warm night air. You are not thinking about anything in particular anymore. Thoughts drift past, loose and unconnected, the way they do in the last stretch before sleep. A fragment of orange sunlight on water, a fragment of a fin breaking the surface, a fragment of ice clinking softly in a glass, none of them asking anything of you, none of them needing to be followed or finished. You let them drift. The waves continue outside, the same steady rhythm they've held all evening, all night, the same patient sound that doesn't change whether you're awake to hear it or not. Roll in, soft white foam spreading thin across the sand, then pull back out again, over and over, an endless, gentle repetition that asks nothing of you except to listen, if you want to or not, if you'd rather just let it become part of the quiet around you. Your body feels heavier in the hammock now, heavier than it has all evening. The night air is warm around you, settled now into that particular still calm that comes after the heat of the day has fully faded, but before the deep cool of very late night sets in. Everything around you, the porch, the sand, the dark water beyond it, has settled into a single, steady warmth, the warmth of a place that has spent the whole day slowly gathering sun, and is only now, this slowly, this gently, beginning to let it go. Out past the waves, the water falls dark and still beneath the stars. It falls quiet around the shapes of dolphins, somewhere out there, resting now, perhaps, the way you are. It falls quiet around the small light of a boat, long since moved on, long since disappeared past the edge of what you could see. It falls evenly, steadily, the way it has been falling into rhythm since before the sun even set, the way it will likely keep falling into that same rhythm long after you've drifted off completely, long after the stars above you have wheeled slowly across the sky and begun, eventually, to fade into morning. Let yourself sink further into the hammock. There is nothing left to notice, nothing left to track, just the waves, steady and even, and the warm, dark, soft and complete, and the slow, heavy feeling of your own body finally, fully letting go. Somewhere far off, very faint, you think you might hear the distant call of a seabird settling for the night, or perhaps it's simply the wind, moving softly through the palms further down the beach. You don't open your eyes to check. You don't need to. The waves are still there. The stars are still there. The warm night air is still settled gently over you, the same as it's been for hours now. Nothing here requires your attention any longer. Your thoughts have grown very slow now, very soft, almost shapeless, a golden sunset sinking slowly into the sea. A grey fin, rising once, then gone. Ice clinking softly in a glass. A small boat, glowing faintly, moving along a dark horizon, a scattering of stars appearing one by one. The smell of salt and warm sand and something sweet blooming somewhere in the dark. None of these need to be held on to. They can simply pass, one after another, slow and unconnected, the way clouds might pass across a sky you're not really watching anymore. The waves continue. They are the last sound you're really aware of now, soft, steady, endless, filling the warm, dark air, filling the space between one breath and the next. They don't need anything from you. They will simply continue all night, rolling gently onto the sand, retreating, returning, the same patient rhythm, the whole quiet length of the shore, while you in the hammock above it, finally, completely let go. Sleep well. There is nowhere else you need to be tonight. Just here, just this, just the waves and the warm dark and the slow, easy weight of finally, fully resting.